I'm Chris Burns, and welcome to The Network, where we connect into a matrix of newsmakers to get to the heart of an issue. And watch out, they've got to answer in 25 seconds or less, or else. Let's take a look at that issue right now. A symbol of Afghanistan's post-Taliban rebirth, in flames and under fire. Insurgents attack it during a provincial governor's conference there, and it takes Afghan security forces, backed by NATO air support, more than 4 hours to flush them out in a bloody gun battle. It's the latest evidence Afghan forces are far from ready to defend their country. Still, U.S. President Barack Obama, facing eroding domestic support for the war, decides to proceed with a troop drawdown. It reverses a surge that improved security in some areas, though at heavy cost. Other countries are also pulling troops out, even though the Taliban are far from defeated. With Osama bin Laden dead, many see little strategic value in Afghanistan anymore. With thousands of lives and hundreds of billions already spent over a decade, the international community is fast losing patience with an Afghan government that still can't defend itself. Now wired into this edition of The Network, here at the European Parliament in Brussels, Homayoun Tandar, Afghan ambassador to Belgium and chief of the Afghan mission to the EU. From NATO headquarters in Brussels, Admiral Gianpaolo Di Paola, chairman of the NATO Military Committee. And also from the European Parliament, German MEP Franziska Katharina Brandner. She's a member of the Greens European Free Alliance and is on the Parliament's Foreign Affairs Committee. Let me begin with a question to all of you, and starting with the ambassador. Some say it's a mistake to draw down forces now. What do you think?
It's not a question of withdrawing the troops now. There's a plan that's been agreed with NATO and the Afghan authorities. The end of the transition will happen in 2014, so there's no panic and no urgency.
Okay, Admiral, how do you answer that? Because a lot of people are saying this is really a bad time to do this.
No, on the contrary, this demonstrates that the process is improving. The transition is a responsible process by which either forces will hand over progressive responsibility to Afghan security forces. And I think this is a demonstration that we are on the right track.
Madame Brandner, I think you would like to see them pulled out faster than they are planned to be, right?
No, but there's an agreed plan which has been agreed by all sides. And I think what is important is to stick to the plan. We also have to be honest that actually the pullout from Obama is to levels that where he started as a president, that it was the same level.
Okay, the British and the Russians both failed at the great game of trying to pacify Afghanistan. Mikhail Gorbachev himself told me it's better to pull everybody out. What would happen if there's a full pullout right now, Ambassador?
It's not happening now. Why do you want me to create a hypothesis? In any case, there's no comparison between the invasion of Afghanistan by Soviet troops, which was a military occupation, and the presence of coalition forces and NATO, authorized by the Security Council and approved by the Afghan government and people.
Okay, Admiral, don't you think, though, that this pullout is a bit too quick, and when there is a pullout, things are going to really unravel, fall apart?
This is a responsible drawdown. First of all, not a pull-out, a responsible drawdown of forces with handing over to Afghan security forces. We are building up Afghan security forces. So you cannot compare with the previous situation because we are not just pulling out. We are responsibly transferring security to Afghan security forces that we are building up. This is tremendous different from the past.
Okay. To you, Madame Brandner, the UN envoy to Afghanistan, Staffan de Mistura, says the transition to Afghan rule is, quote, on track. Do you agree with him? But keep in mind, too, that the UN said that civilian deaths are up more than 15% this year, nearly 1,500 people in the first half of the year.
You know, I think in terms of the building up of the police forces and the security sector in general, but also of the justice sector, there's still much work to do. And I think we should not be misled of believing that the work is done after 1 decade. It takes decades. So I think we have to make clear that the building up the really training police forces, for example, will not stop, and it has to continue, because I don't believe, the job is done in that area at all.
Okay. Ambassador, is it realistic to believe that Afghanistan can really have a true democracy? Isn't a balance of power of warlords, including the Taliban, more realistic?
If you think of democracy as a process that one can apply from one day to the next, I believe that's the wrong path. It's the desire of the population, I believe, in all countries the world over. The youth of the world is showing that if you follow democracy, they'll get a lawful government, popular participation, and an improvement in the lives of the people.
Admiral, it's said that the Americans have the watches and the Taliban have the time. Do you think it's just a waiting game for the Taliban to take over?
I think so. I don't think so at all. And as a matter of fact, if you see the last blast of by the Taliban, the attempt, because they realize they don't have the time, they have the watch. That's why they're acting as they are. So I would say the right reading is the other way around. They don't have the time. They are losing the time. They just have a malfunctioning watch.
Madame Brandner, what kind of deal can you see with the Taliban to stop the fighting? Keep in mind about President Karzai's son, Karzai's brother, being assassinated in southern Afghanistan, where he's seen as a power broker. That's going to make things much more difficult. You know,
I think it's difficult to say the Taliban. Obviously, in Afghanistan, it has a much wider diversity, and what everybody's hoping for is that you will try to negotiate with some and not with others, and bring some on board and others probably not. So I think that's the process that's actually going on. And yes, you have always defeats, but makes it harder, but shouldn't stop us.
Right. Ambassador, how do you respond to that? What kind of political arrangement do you see?
Let's not forget the three pillars which exist, and the reintegration which is really going well, the military pressure which is there, and the political reconciliation that we've begun. And the loss of Ahmed Wali Karzai is deeply felt in that domain because he had a network, he had contacts. But we're not going to abandon the efforts we've already committed to. We'll get there.
Admiral, is demilitarizing the international force and focusing more on development, is that really realistic? That seems to be the strategy, but some say you can't rebuild Afghanistan without more security.
But we are building this security. I like to repeat it. We are building the Afghan security forces. It is proper for the Afghan security forces to take care of those security. We are investing massively in terms of money, resources, time. We are building security. You have to realize we are realizing an Afghan surge. African surge. This needs to be understood.
Okay. Admiral, let me ask you also, how do you avoid so many civilian deaths, though, from the NATO strikes?
We are doing with clearly straight, very careful behavior in what we do. We always are working with our Afghan friends together, hand in hand. They are always in the lead, even in the very much criticized operation to hunting down certain people. So that's the way we do. Carefulness, strict obey to the rule of engagement. That's the way we do.
Madame Brandner, what about the argument that if Europe and NATO do not make an effort to stabilize Afghanistan, you're going to have a lot more refugees, as you have in the past, coming and flooding into Europe? Isn't that a good argument to become more involved in Afghanistan?
For me, the real objective is to help the Afghan people. And I think that's a project for decades, as I said earlier on. You can't build this up in a few years. And I think, in the security sector and the building up of police forces, what NATO and the US especially has done for long, it's way too short. It's a few weeks training. And I think we have to invest much more heavily when we really want to build up, for example, a functioning and democratic police.
Madame Brandner. Thank you. Ambassador, let me give the last question to you. Why can't we get more Muslim countries, more Muslim troops to be as part of the security force there in Afghanistan?
Listen, participation is voluntary. There are already a certain number of Muslim countries involved in efforts to form the Afghan army and the existence or approval of security, if I can say that. There are 5 or 6 Muslim countries, including Turkey now, that we can't force to take part. But anyway, it's not a religious issue, it's a geostrategic issue.
Thanks very much. Thanks to all of you for joining us. That's all the time we've got for now. I'd like to thank our guests, Ambassador Humayun Tandar, Admiral Gianpaolo Di Paola, and MEP Francisca Caterina Brandner. I'm Chris Burns, and until next time, thanks for connecting with The Network.